You ever been walking or biking and just had that heart-stopping moment? You know, that close call with a car that leaves you shaken up. It's a feeling that is unfortunately really common. We like to think our streets are for everyone, but the data, well, it tells a much, much scarier story if you're not wrapped in a ton of steel. Okay, let's dive into this. So let's start by looking at the raw risk, the fundamental danger of just getting around town. For anyone who walks or bikes, that daily commute can carry a risk that's not only hidden, but totally out of proportion.
Get ready for this. When a crash involves a pedestrian, it is nearly 19 times more likely to be fatal than any other kind of traffic crash. I mean, just look at those numbers. 5.6% versus 0.3%. That is an absolutely staggering difference.
And that leads us to the big question behind this whole investigation. Okay, yeah, we know a person is more vulnerable than a car, that's obvious. But why is the system failing them so spectacularly? What is it that's turning our own sidewalks and crosswalks into such dangerous places? To get some answers, we're going to follow a team of researchers who did something pretty cool. They decided to treat this problem like a series of crime scenes. They zeroed in on 4 different cities in Michigan to see if they could find any patterns, any clues. So the source for all of this is a really deep dive report from Western Michigan University and the Michigan Department of Transportation. These folks combed through years and years of crash data from these 4 cities, searching for clues in the numbers, the locations, you name it. And check this out. This is what they found. Looking at these crash maps from just one of the cities, Grand Rapids, you can literally see where things are going wrong. Each one of those little black dots is a crash. You see them clustering downtown, right, and along those big main roads. But, and this is important, look how they're also just kind of scattered everywhere. This isn't just a downtown problem, it is a system-wide issue. Okay, so the typical response to a problem like this is to build our way out of it, right? You know, more sidewalks, better bike lanes, brighter crosswalks. But the researchers really wanted to know, is all that physical stuff, that infrastructure, is it actually enough to solve the problem on its own? Let's look at a specific case from the report. In Ann Arbor, they installed this special kind of traffic signal. It's called a pedestrian hybrid beacon on a really busy street. Basically, it stays dark until someone walking pushes the button, and then boom, it stops all the cars. And guess what? It worked. Crashes went down. So this shows that, yes, smart engineering can definitely be part of the solution.
And looking at the bigger picture, the report confirmed what a lot of us suspect. These kinds of improvements do have a real impact. Just adding sidewalks where there weren't any, that reduced crashes. Better signals? They helped. Creating pathways for walking and biking that are actually connected and don't just randomly end? Super important. Even something like taking out street parking to add a protected bike lane made a real difference. So yeah, better design absolutely matters. But here's the twist. Even with all these successful little projects, that huge, scary number from the beginning is still a reality. So if pouring concrete and painting lines helps, but it doesn't solve the whole problem, there's got to be another piece to this puzzle, right? What are we all missing?
And that brings us to what is, for my money, the most surprising and important finding in this entire investigation. The researchers stumbled onto a clue that has almost nothing to do with engineering and everything to do with what's going on in our heads. A widespread culture of confusion. Okay, before we get to the data, we have to get on the same page with one key term. Right of way. This isn't about being nice or letting someone go first. It is the actual law that says who is legally allowed to proceed in any given situation. It's not a suggestion, it's the law. So the researchers went out and asked people a really simple question. At a crosswalk, when the signal is flashing don't walk, who has the legal right of way? Now, in Grand Rapids, things looked pretty good. Over 86% of people got it right. The driver does. But then they asked the exact same question in Ann Arbor and Flint. And wow, the results were just alarming. Almost a third of the people there got it wrong. They thought the pedestrian still had the right of way. That is a huge and frankly dangerous misunderstanding of a basic rule of the road. And the report is really clear about this. When people get these basic rules wrong, it's not because they're trying to be difficult, it's a straight-up failure of education and awareness. We just assume everybody knows the rules, but this data shows that they absolutely do not. In this confusion, it has devastating real-world consequences. Just look at this chart. In Flint, one of the cities where that confusion was really high, a jaw-dropping 71% of all the severe or fatal bike crashes happened at night. Compare that to the average in the other cities, which was just 18%. That is not a coincidence. That is an outlier that screams for an explanation. So there it is, the smoking gun. The researchers found this powerful, direct link between a community's general understanding of traffic laws, its safety culture, you could say, and its actual safety record. Confusion leads to chaos, and chaos on our streets, well, it's deadly.
So what do we do with all this? Well, the investigation doesn't just leave us with the problem. It actually points toward a new, much more complete way of thinking about how to make our streets safer. It's about coming up with a whole new scorecard for what makes a city safe.
You know, the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that we can't just engineer our way out of the problem. Building better streets is vital, for sure, but it is not enough. The real solution has to be centered on people. It has to understand and actually design for human behavior. And this is the roadmap they came up with, a simple 4-step framework. Step 1, you measure the infrastructure you have. Step 2, you figure out how many people are actually out there walking and biking. But then, critically, step 3, you have to address education. And finally, step 4, you track the actual safety results. It's this holistic approach that says knowing the rules is just as important as having a bike lane. And that brings us right back home, doesn't it? This isn't just about 4 cities in Michigan. This way of thinking applies everywhere. It really makes you stop and wonder, if we used this scorecard in your town, in your neighborhood, how would it do? How well do your neighbors, and let's be honest, how well do you really know the rules of the road? The answer to that question just might be the key to a safer street for everyone.